What does the sudden stop at the school gate and Liam's unexpected appearance foreshadow? Why has the relationship between him and the narrator become the talk of the town? Curious about the mysterious car stop at the school gate? Subscribe to my channel to catch every detail. 29. It's about you. Just you. A familiar car stopped in front of me as soon as I walked out of the gate of my school, forcing me to take a step back. I was in the company of other teachers. Everyone stopped. All of their attention now focused on their alpha, who oh so gracefully rolled down the window of his car and looked straight at me. The crowd went silent, their gaze traveling back and forth between me and Liam. I'm not blaming them really, we are the talk of the town these days. And to find the two leads of the hottest gossip right in front of you, I would have done the same. I love a good drama, just not the ones associated with me. If it's happening elsewhere, I'm all ears. Some of the more courageous ones greeted Liam, who greeted them back politely. The others just gawked at him. As for me, I stood rooted to my spot, not knowing whether to move away or to greet him. He's probably here on pack business. As if on cue, I saw my little devil poke his head out from under his father's arm. "Mommy," he yelled in glee, "we are here to pick you up. Daddy says I can have ice cream today." My head started pounding with hundreds of questions. But one look at him and I had my answer in his eyes. "This is about last night." "Ice-cream," he absent-mindedly corrected Dan, not moving his intense gaze away from me. I glared at him but quickly schooled my expression when Beth, my only friend from work, nudged me. I gave her a smile. It reminded me that we were in public and that I need to put my acts together. He got out of the car and moved towards the passenger door, greeting people humbly on his way. He knows how to impress the crowd with his perfect act, doesn't he? I now know what he meant when he said that his perfect face was for everyone else but me. He picked Dan up from the passenger seat and buckled him safely in the back seat. He then proceeded to give me his most innocent smile as he held the passenger door for me. My heart thudded even when my head burned in rage. He raised a brow, challenging me to defy him. "Quick, Mommy," Dan shouted impatiently. With a final sigh of resignation, I marched towards him. Brushing past him, I quickly took my seat, eager to get away from the public scrutiny. I glared at him once more when he looked down at me with that stupid smile of his still in place. I let out a relieved breath once we were out of my school's premise. "How was school?" I asked Dan, ignoring Liam. Dan went on and on about his day. I smiled and encouraged him as he spoke. Liam somehow managed to join in the conversation. I hope this was a one-time thing. I looked pointedly at Liam once Dan got tired of talking. "Ice cream." "Of course, I don't want to spoil him," he said, staring ahead. I grinded my jaws together. "That's not." I had to take a break to control my frustration. "I don't want you to pick me up ever again." "What if I want to?" he replied. "I wouldn't be as supportive as I was today." "I'm sure you wouldn't want to ruin your perfect image," I hit back. "I don't care," he said. "Of course you do," I argued. "That's all you have ever cared about." "Go on a date with me and find out what I really care about," he replied casually. I opened and closed my mouth like a fish trying to find a comeback. "Oh wow," I said in mock amazement. "You really are something else. How were you able to hide this craziness?" I pointed at the whole of him inside that perfect demure of yours. "We are here," he turned to me with a smile. "I'm hungry. We'll continue this soon, I promise." "You're hungry?" All my previous thoughts went flying through the window. "Did you not have your lunch?" I asked, following him as he picked Dan up from his seat and closed the door. He gave me a smile and started walking towards the ice cream parlor, talking animatedly with an excited Dan in his arms. "Why did you skip your lunch?" I blocked his path. He chuckled happily and put Dan down. "Buddy, why don't you take a look at the flavors?" He walked Dan to the parlor and pushed the door open. Dan excitedly hopped inside. Walking back to me, he tilted his head to carefully look at me. "You were saying?" I rolled my eyes, totally aware of the attention we were getting. "Why can't we just blend into the crowd?" "Why did you skip your lunch?" "Is it because they kicked you out of the house? Do you have nowhere to go?" "But you can stay in the pack house, you know. They have food too." "You could stop. He raised his hand hurriedly. I narrowed my eyes at him. "Don't do that," he said. "Do what?" I asked. "Don't care for me so much." His face turned serious. All the previous playfulness wiped out of his eyes. "It's my turn to care for you. My turn to pine for you. You have done everything so perfectly until this moment that it almost makes me wonder whether you are even immortal." I opened my mouth to reply, but he continued, "Yell at me when I frustrate you. Humiliate me in public if I try to take advantage of the crowd to make you do things you don't want to. You don't have to take my feelings or my position into consideration when I didn't take yours. Wait, I stopped him. You don't want me to cooperate with you. He shook his head. But then why are you doing this? What do you want? By this I meant everything that he has done since last night. We shouldn't keep Dan waiting, he said, as always changing the topic when he's done. A shiver ran up my arms as I felt him take my hand. My eyes jolted to my hand as I watched him slowly lace his fingers with mine. I looked up to find him staring at me with a challenge in his eyes. Once the giddiness in my stomach died down, my first instinct was to pull my hand away. He started walking towards the shop with our hands entwined. I felt a tug. If he took another stride, I'll have to move with him. I panicked. Looking around, I felt like the entire world had stopped, and that everyone was watching me, waiting for my next step. My feet slowly moved forward, letting Liam do whatever he was planning to do. My gaze met his. A flicker of disappointment crossed his eyes as he turned to look ahead. By the way, he said after he finished his burger, watching me and Dan devour our ice creams, the way you went on earlier. The playfulness in his eyes was back. It reminded me of how much your non-stop chatter irritated me back then. I shot him a glare. I should keep doing that if it irritated you so much. Will serve its purpose, won't it? He shook his head. I don't think that's a good idea. Why? Because I just realized why it irritated me so much, and that why is no longer valid. So, it'll actually do the opposite, he replied. I narrowed my eyes at him. Am I just plain dumb, or does most of what you say not make sense to you either? He laughed. Of course, Luna, I reassured her. I'll be there for breakfast tomorrow. I really wasn't avoiding you. I had to speak to my mother this morning. Yes, of course. Sure. Yes. I took a deep sigh of relief once I was done with the call. God, I'm so not looking forward to tomorrow. That was awkward. She was trying to sound normal but was doing a poor job at it. She sounded like she cried the day away. There's another person I need to call. I dialed him and waited patiently as the rings went away one by one until I was left with silence. I cursed out loud. It's the first time he's doing this, avoiding me. I heard he went to pick you up yesterday. I choked on my food as soon as the senior alpha spoke. Emma patted me on my back and offered water that I gratefully accepted. I'm currently having breakfast at the alphas without the alpha. Everyone up until this point was trying their best to look normal and pretend like the last few days never happened. The senior alpha has a lot of connections. He's the one who actually oversees their family business because both his sons are usually busy with the pack administration, although Evan does take a look into it now and then. He'll probably take over his father, seeing how all Liam cares about is the hospital. The largest part of their profit actually goes to the pack. So this kind of is pack business too, like shares and all. It's complicated. I'm not really interested in financial administration, so I don't understand half of what they do. Anyways, Alpha Blake has employed half the town and beyond under him, so he gets real-time news of everything that happens in and around the pack. I nodded. If I verbally reply to his query, I'm afraid it'll become a full-blown discussion. I dread that. Be careful, that's all he said. Careful of whom? Liam or the people? Both the father and son love to talk cryptic, don't they? I looked down at my little son sitting next to me, gulping down his food like a war's about to break. Sigh. How I wish he turns out normal. A mother can dream, can't she? Before the end of the morning, Luna had already invited herself over to my house for dinner. Great. A few more explanations are due. I looked around as soon as I spotted his shiny black SUV from the school gates. I made a dash to his car, opened the passenger seat and quickly buckled myself in. I finally released the breath I was holding. Fast, 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 I ordered an amused Liam. Drive away, please, he obliged. You look like you are running away after stealing someone's valuables, he chuckled. I glared at him. I don't want to be seen with you. I told you not to repeat it. You still cooperated. I thought you said you won't be as supportive as you were yesterday. So, if I walk away tomorrow. I started with hope I'll follow you, of course, he finished. So what do you want me to do? I asked, frustrated. Yell and tell people that their alpha's a stalker, he laughed. Maybe. Where's Dan? I asked. Dropped him off at Mom's, he replied. I sighed and sank back into the seat. You know, I love walking back home. It's not that far. I'll walk with you then, he offered. I rolled my head towards him, too tired to actually turn to him properly. Why are you doing this? I asked. Is it because she? I quickly corrected myself. Is it because you're afraid of people leaving you behind? The car came to an abrupt halt. It's not about her, he said firmly. It's not. I asked, surprised. No, he replied, turning to look straight at me. It's about you, just you 30. Moving on. Is it that easy for you? It's finally Saturday. I have been waiting eagerly for this day. It's been 4 days since Dan's birthday and Ray is stubbornly refusing to answer my calls. I also have to take care of the Jean woman. She is the storm that's approaching faster than I can run, and I can run pretty fast. So yeah, it's going to be a busy day. The doorbell brought with it the scent of my mate. I wonder why he's here early in the morning. Hey, he said as I opened the door. Good morning. My greeting came out more like a question. I raised my brow, waiting for him to state the reason for his visit. Me and Dan planned a ride by the lake today, he said, running a hand nervously through his hair. I was hoping you could come along. You know, when my wolves is out, it'll be hard to take care of Dan alone. I do remember Dan saying something like that last night. I didn't pay much attention to it because he was mostly yelling in excitement, and I could hardly catch any meaningful word out of the lot. Oh, I would have come along, but what do I tell him? I have somewhere to go today. I offered him an apologetic smile. I'll ask Emma to fill in for me. No, it's fine, he said. We can do it some other time. Dan is really excited though, I replied. I think I'll be good to engage him in some physical activity. You guys can have fun too. Don't ruin it because of me. I'll ask Emma, but don't worry. She doesn't hold any grudge against you, I assured him. He nodded apprehensively. He turned to leave but stopped midway. Are you going to him? He asked softly. I thought of many possible replies to that but came up with nothing. So I just nodded. Okay, he replied before walking away. Liam's interaction with his younger brother's wife has always been minimal. He knew she was an intelligent woman with adequate common sense, if that can be counted as a quality, that is. It was still weird to spend an entire afternoon with her. They had nothing to talk about. It was awkward in the beginning, but they settled for a comfortable silence after a while. Dan kept them busy for most part of the noon, so that helped a lot. So it surprised him when she stopped him when he was ready to carry a sleeping Dan back home. Whatever you are doing, she said. It's working. He paused to turn and look at her, his eyebrows raised in confusion. I don't know why you are behaving the way you are, with Eva, she explained. She has his attention now. It's making her take a notice of you. He remained silent. She smiled. She's content with letting her wolf be with her mate, while she tactfully avoids you. She'll continue to do that unless you directly confront her fears. When she cares for you, when she worries about you, it's not for you, it's for your wolf, she said. But when she's irritated by your behavior, when you do something that surprises her, it's you she looks at, it's you she thinks about. She finished. Why are you telling me? He let his question remain unfinished. Because I love her, she said before bowing to him. He watched her walk away, leaving him too stunned to respond. Eva. Come on, Ray, I said, kicking his door as hard as I could. Open the damn door. I know you're there. I could hear him curse out loud before walking grudgingly towards the door. You should have informed me before coming here and breaking my door, he said, opening the door. I would have informed you had you taken the trouble to pick my calls, I accused. Glaring at him, I landed myself on his couch. He met my gaze, opened his mouth to say something but stopped himself. He sat at the farthest corner of the sofa. Why are you here? He asked. We are too old to play that game, Ray. I told him you left unannounced. I needed some time alone, he said, looking at anywhere but me. You should have said so. You should have at least sent a message or something, even if you didn't want to talk to me. He sighed in frustration. I know I can't complain. I knew this was going to happen when I decided to leave Australia. I know you promised nothing. But he buried his face between his palms. I just missed those days, okay? Now I just feel like I'm a stranger to you guys. I feel like I don't even belong there. Even with Dan, I feel like we are growing apart, like I shouldn't exert so much authority over him. I slid towards him and put my arms around him. My heart was crying for him, but I managed to paste a smile on my face. It's like we got divorced and I got the custody. He shrugged my hands off. It's not funny, he said. It's not, I replied, but it's the closest possible way to explain things. Dan, you have the right to exert as much authority over him as you want. He's as much yours as he's mine. We are living separately because that's how life is. You have to move on. But that doesn't mean we can undo relationships. He looked at me, moving on. He chuckled dryly. Is it that easy for you? It isn't, I said honestly, but when staying in the past only brings me pain and the possibility of moving on gives me hope, I'll at least try to move towards that hope. I'm trying, Ray, and I wish you would do the same. Sure, he replied sarcastically. I'm trying. Can't you see? Well, good news for you. I have a date tonight with Jean. The words slipped out before I could hold back. With Jean? Yes, he sighed. At least that crazy woman keeps my mind off my troubles by giving me a whole lot of extra troubles. I think I heard his voice soften a notch when he spoke about her. A voice that didn't reflect dislike, but a truck full of irritation. I'm bored anyways, he continued. It's not like I have Dan with me to keep me busy during the weekends. My heart tugged as I recalled Liam taking Dan to the lake this morning. Every time I look at Ray, I hate myself more and more. An idea popped into my mind. How about an entire week with Dan? I asked him. He was suddenly all ears. How? I thought of ways to explain my situation to him. I'm actually planning on taking a vacation. You can keep him then, and why can't Dan go with you? I was planning on taking him, I said, but you deserve some time with him. I'm sorry that I've taken him away from you 1 week. Me and Dan? He asked. I nodded. He almost smiled. So why can't we both come along? He continued. On your vacation. Now this is hard to explain. It's mating season, I declared bluntly. You can't come along. I'll probably jump your bones. He gave me a pointed look that said, you are not as funny as you think. I'm serious, I said. Remember how I used to tell you to stay away for about a month each year? He gave me a blank look. You used to tell me to stay away every month of every year. I don't remember getting a special memo. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, well, just like many other animal species, we too have that time of the year that's most suitable for breeding. We call it the mating season. So hormones act crazy and things get heated up, blah blah blah. You get my point, I said, trying to hide the blush threatening to creep up my face. It reaches its peak during the middle of the month, for about a week. So it's the holiday week. Dan will be free for the week. His face suddenly darkened. So you'll send Dan here and stay there? He paused. His jaws tightened with him. I wanted to yell at him for thinking so low of me, but my denial will only give him hope. I've ruined him enough. I don't deserve to be his friend if I still lead him on. So I remained silent. I asked you something, he gritted out, the veins around his throat popping out. We are working on our relationship, I managed to say. He got up abruptly. Can you please leave for today? He said, looking away. But I began. Please, he pleaded. I nodded, a rush of tears threatening to break free. I stood up instantly and walked out of the door, restraining my desire to look back. If I look back, I'll see his anguish and show him mine. It will do no good. Getting inside the car, I took a moment to pull myself together. Pulling out my phone, I scrolled for the number that I just dug out of Ray's call log and dialed her, unashamed. Hello, came her deep businesslike voice. Eva here, I said. There was a brisk pause. To what do I owe this pleasure? She replied sarcastically. I believe you have a date with Ray this evening. I want to keep our conversation short. I don't see why I have to confirm my schedule with you, she said. Because I need to meet you before you get to him. That sounded real stupid. I mean now. I need to meet you now. Gosh, this woman makes me more nervous than Alpha Blake did when I was a kid. She chuckled. I don't have a reason to waste my time on you, though you really think you don't. I asked confidently. I'm sitting outside Ray's house right now. Let's get over with this soon, okay? I don't really know what to do with your case. I'm one step away from getting out of my car and having the talk with him, I told her. Where do you want to meet? Came her instant reply. Ow, this is bad news. Her eagerness is bad news. The coffee shop next to your office, I told her. You know where my office is? It was a statement. Just like you know everything about me, I replied. Fair enough, she sighed. 20 minutes, I offered. Okay. Am I expected to exchange pleasantries with the woman my man is obsessed with? She asked sarcastically as I sat down opposite to her. You are rude, I mocked her. What can I say? She leaned towards me. You are not my favorite person at this moment. Spoilt brat, I rolled my eyes. What do you want? She asked. I want to know about your intentions, I replied on the same tone as her. How far are you going to drag this date joke with Ray? I'll answer you, she said, if you satisfy my curiosity first. I'm really curious about a certain thing, you see. And I totally don't like it when something confuses me. I quirked a brow in question. Why haven't you told him yet? Why didn't you tell him the first day you met me? I thought it was a one-time thing. I didn't want to pique your interest more by creating a scene. I thought if I downplay your threat, you wouldn't take him as a challenge. Also, I didn't want to scare him more than he already was. I told her it was my biggest mistake. I found out last week that you are still seeing him, she smirked, and you don't like it. Don't get me wrong, I would have loved it if you were a human, I replied, but now that you're still here and with the reputation that your kind has, I'm forced to assume that it's not going to end anytime soon. The last bit was a question for her. She nodded. And your assumption is correct, she smiled victoriously. So why didn't you tell him last week itself? Or today? Why did you call me first? What do I tell her? That I found out this afternoon that she has a chance. That he doesn't dislike her. Me being me, I don't think I have a right to rat you out without giving you a chance to tell him yourself. After all, my situation wasn't too different from yours, I sighed, and also Ray, he deserves the most faithful and the most giving love that is there in the world. I've heard that with your kind, love is absolute. I'm selfish when it comes to the people I care about. So, for a split second, I desired that kind of dedication for the man I once loved. She was looking at me with interest. Now I know how stupid that idea is. So I had to meet you quick before I could change my mind. This has to be by far the worst decision I've ever made. So you don't want me to get away from him? She asked, surprised. Will you get away from him if I want you to? I said no, she replied. Exactly, I replied, I don't want a bloodbath. Not until I've exhausted all other peaceful means first. So tell me what you plans with Ray are. I've chosen him, she said. He's the one I'm planning to love for the rest of my life. I was expecting this, but it still sent chills down my spine when she put it into words. I have a few conditions, I told her, making sure my voice didn't quiver. She raised a brow. 1 month, I said. I'm giving you 1 month to tell him the truth. If you don't tell him the entire truth by then, I'll do it, and it wouldn't be pleasant. Are you threatening me? She asked, a challenge in her voice. The threat starts now, I said. If he wants you out of his life, you'll leave him alone. I won't, she said firmly. Yes, you will, I threatened, my voice rising by a notch. I could see heads turning towards us. You will not use your dirty tricks to bind him to you. If you can win him over with love, he's yours. But if you don't leave even when he doesn't want you around, then you'll have to face me, she smirked. Don't take my words lightly. This is a threat. Harm him and I'll send an entire army of wolves to finish you. It was my turn to smirk. You must have dug out enough information about me. So, you do know that my mate actually has the power to take on you, don't you? Interesting, she said calmly, her sharp eyes fixed on me. I finally found Liam his competitor. This woman's nonchalance is almost as much, if not more, infuriating than my mate's. What? I asked lazily, taking a sip of my now cold coffee. There's no point in boiling my blood over her when she doesn't even take my threat seriously. I might as well send Liam to deal with her. You, she said with equal ease. You are not what I wanted you to be. I think I dislike you more now, she declared. Sure, Ice Queen, whatever floats your boat. My love for you won't be diminished by your dislike for me. 1 month, I reminded her before picking my purse up. It's time for me to make a grand exit. Once I was out of the safe and out of her sight, I let go of the breath that I was holding. I just made a bloody deal with a vampire. It was evening by the time I reached home. The strange thing is that I clearly remember switching off all the lights before I exited the house. Why is my house illuminated? I got my answer as soon as I stepped into my porch. He's here. Why are you here? I asked, opening the front door, but was met with an empty hall. I followed his scent that led me to Dan's room. I opened my mouth to complain when I saw him sitting on Dan's bed, but he silenced me with a finger on his lips. He pointed at my sleeping son. I nodded. He softly got up from the bed and followed me out, quietly shutting the door behind him. He got tired after playing in the woods. He fell asleep shortly after he explained. I'll get going, I nodded once again. I don't want to deal with him today. That vamp gave me a lot to think about. Oops. Speaking of the vamp, I called after him hesitantly. He stopped at the door and turned back to look at me. I gave him a sheepish smile. I may or may not have threatened someone using your name today. He was suddenly alert. What happened? He asked, walking back to me. Nothing, I replied immediately. I just thought I should let the alpha know just in case my little threat takes an ugly turn. I joined my index and thumb together to emphasize how harmless my threat was. But still, you never know, I might need his help if that vamp doesn't keep her promise. He'll help me, right? Isn't that his job as an alpha? His eyes narrowed as he leaned into me to take a sniff, stopping at my neck for an extra second. I moved away. A vampire, he said, alarmed. Did he hurt you? Where is he? Where did he find you? What did he want? He started to search for my non-existent injuries. It's a she, I might as well tell him and ask for his help. No, she didn't hurt me. She didn't find me. I called her out. I answered his questions. Why would you do something like that? He asked, why don't you sit down? I pointed at the sofa. He looked confused, but his defense was still up. We settled on the sofa opposite to each other. But he was leaning towards me, still looking for injuries even though he knew there were none. You know, the day before Dan's birthday when you overheard me and Ray we were talking about his date. What does he have to do with this? He asked impatiently. His date turned out to be a vampire, I said in one breath. He nodded. Just when I was about to praise him for taking the information so lightly, he yelled, what? I sighed. That's more like it. Yeah, it turns out people born with rotten luck voluntarily fall in the arms of fire. Ray's that lucky guy. As if I wasn't enough to shock the hello. So did you threaten her to stay away? He asked urgently. What if I did? I asked out of plain curiosity. That would be the stupidest thing you could have ever done, he said. If she has her set eyes on him, she'll fight to death before giving up on him. He laced his hand together. A look of determination set upon his face. You stay out of it. I'll take the necessary security measures. Don't go near her ever again. Give us her details and we'll take care of it. And don't tell anyone else that you threatened her. Slow down. I paused him. I said, what if? I'm not that stupid, okay? I said, offended. I know that she's here to stay. So, I might as well make the best out of this horrible situation. He was looking at me with doubt. I gave her a month's time to tell Ray her truth. But if she uses force on him, I told her that. I looked away embarrassed. That I'll send your army to hunt her. I tightly shut my eyes close, scared of his reaction. I heard a chuckle followed by a short laugh. I relaxed. You did the right thing, he said. Really? I asked, surprised. He nodded. But next time you do it, please make sure to take me or at least Evan with you, okay? I wrapped the situation around my head. So what you are saying is that you'll help Ray? I asked incredulously. I owe him a lot, he replied. I'll be happy to pay at least some of the debt back. My head automatically lowered. I have nothing to say to that. I don't think I can even attempt to start repaying him. It'll be an insult to him if I do that. Liam seems to have sensed that. So, did you have a successful trip? He asked hesitantly. I shook my head. He's upset, I said softly. I'm planning of sending Dan to him for a week during the holidays. I don't know what else to do. I heard him intake a sharp breath. Also, I'm going on vacation during that time. I need to inform him anyways. I might as well get over with it. His eyes traveled to my neck instantly. Stop doing that, I told him. I'm sorry. He looked away, clenching his jaws together. That's a good idea. It was as if he was forcing the words out. I'll try and stay away until the peak. I silently agreed. The next month is going to be challenging, and we don't even have a week to prepare for it. 31. Don't flatter yourself. What do you mean I can't go? I asked, half confused, half furious. Luna Alexandra was currently sitting in my living room with Emma. The full moon this month. There are rituals and offerings that you'll have to perform. This month, it's not just about the heat, dear. Luna tried to explain softly, almost afraid that I'll snap midway. You'll have to do that as the Pax Luna. People are. I'm not the Pax Luna. I cut her off, trying to keep my tone as civil as possible. You are. She sighed. You have no idea how hard it was for me to decide to come to you regarding this. We know the complications of your relationship with Liam, but... I softened at her helplessness. I already talked to the Alpha about this last week. I held her hand, assuring her, and he gave me permission to leave. She looked taken aback for a moment. You two talked about this. She was questioning her own question like it never occurred to her. I gave her a small smile and nodded. We are not ready for this, I quickly added when her face started to light up in hope. I have realized that when it comes to Liam and my relationship, I hesitate to give out details. I don't want others to know where we stand. It's already weird that people have started calling me their Luna. It's not their fault. No, that's how the society works. The fact that I'm not in love with their Alpha wouldn't change their outlook. They probably are like, what? Is that even a real problem? She's our Luna because the moon told us so. Duh. I know. Luna nodded sadly, but it's still your job to do. It's a blessing of health and fertility that the goddess endows us with. You will have to pray for the well-being of all the pack people. Who did it for the last couple of years? I asked, hoping that would show them reason. No one, Luna replied. No one? How's that possible? I was astonished. It's the duty of the other half of the Alpha. Liam was given the position because She abruptly stopped. Because he was about to mark Maya. I finished the sentence for her. She flinched. But he hasn't marked me. How can I perform the rituals? Because you are the mate that the goddess chose for him. Emma said she had to be marked to be his mate, and only then could she perform the rituals. But you are his birth mate, you can do that, but it would still have been more accurate had he marked you. She almost whispered the last part. Too tired to argue, I just looked at her. I hope my expressions portrayed what I really want to tell her. Can you even understand the words you are throwing at me? This month, all these years. Luna looked tired too. When the homes of every other pack lit up in excitement, ours stayed in darkness. I beg you, Eva, please do this for us. We need new rules, I told him as I sat next to him on the mountain top. Awesome, he grinned in mock excitement. I love rules. I narrowed my eyes. I didn't know there was a sarcastic bone in you. What can I say? Humor dancing in his eyes. Your charms are rubbing on me, I chuckled. Rules, I said. Coming to the point, I guess you've already heard that my hard-earned vacation has been cancelled. He nodded. So we both need rules to survive the month. Unscathed. He barked out a laugh. Do you even realize how you say things? He asked. I blinked in confusion. It's cute, he assured. Are you flirting with me? I gave him a pointed look. Maybe. He offered. I see, I nodded. You haven't recovered from whatever that rogue hit your head with that day. He grinned. So what do you want me to do? Staying away will be helpful, I said. And what else can you do? I asked. I know it'll be harder for you than anyone else. How much can you rein your wolf? What if I don't want to put a leash on my wolf? He questioned, all the playfulness drained out of his eyes. I gulped. Don't do that. I was suddenly at loss. All my plans depend on his support. I can't do anything without him being on the same page as me. I was kidding. His eyes softened. I'll not let this month ruin the plans I have for the rest of our future. What plan? There isn't one, there are many. He smiled. So back to the rules. We will both try the hardest we can. Let that be the only rule. Okay. I nodded. But I'll stay away. I'll stop picking you up from school. I'll drop Dan off before you reach home. What else? He recited. I'll stop coming here, so you can come here whenever you feel suffocated without worrying about me. I'll see you at the other end of the month, he said. There are rituals we have to perform together. And the pack parties, I reminded him. Oh, I guess I didn't keep them in my count. I'll see what I can do about them. The only thing you need to do is try and cover your scent as much as possible, he said. How? I asked curiously. I don't know, he shrugged. Wear more clothes. He offered. I'll be dying of heat anyways, I replied. Won't even wear as much as I wear on normal days. Is that an invitation? He shut up at my glare. How about perfume? It might help a little, he suggested. That might help, I nodded slowly. Okay, I'll bath in liters of those stuffs. He crinkled his nose in disgust. Yep. That's the exact reaction I need, I told him. The days that followed were hell. I don't know how Liam was doing because he's keeping his part of the deal. I haven't seen him in the past 2 weeks. But I did hear stories of broken vases and tables being replaced from the Alpha's room in the pack house. Going to work was a nightmare. I don't know if it's the moon goddess punishment for me, but I seem to have hit the rock harder than the rest of the crowd around me. I couldn't concentrate on my lessons so much that I had to take an extra week's leave before the actual holidays started. I've been staying home under the shower for most part of the day. Taking care of Dan's basic needs is getting harder and harder. My mother gave me medicines to make the heat a little bearable. That, she explained, was from my father's private stock. It's embarrassing to know that the entire pack knows what's happening or what's not happening in my bedroom. These are the times when you wish you were a human. Dan's holidays start today, so Emma promised to come and take care of him during the day. She's obviously saner because she's providing her wolf with what she needs and mine is acting like a BTZ. There's no one I can give Dan to during the nights. Everyone's busy. I'm the only available person. Sending him to Ray is no longer an option. Since I'm not going on that vacation, keeping Dan near me might actually stop me from doing something I'll regret. It's finally the first day of the 7-day ritual. Luna has been preparing me for the week. I realized how little I know about the actual traditions of our kind. Only the mated wolves are allowed to participate, she explained. The rituals start somewhere around midnight so I can put Dan to sleep before I leave the house for the temple. You do realize that he will be here any minute, don't you? Sarah said as we reached the temple. Sarah, don't scare her, Emily chided. I'm not scared. If anything, I feel like I'll faint if he doesn't come at a touching distance within the next 10 minutes. My pupils are of the same color as my wolf so they can't see her, but she's there, my wolf, near the surface, ready to jump. I knew it was going to be hard, but I assumed it would be as difficult as the night 5 years ago. Turns out, That night was just a yearning in comparison to the burning desires that I never knew I could possess. Plus he's starving, Ruby added her thoughtful bit. I'm f***ing starving too, I finally yelled in frustration. I might as well have slept with him had I known that my sex life would be so important to the pack people. Why don't you guys just kill me before you slowly embarrass me to death? Chill, Sarah said after she recovered from the shock of my loudness. The elders are almost here. They will hear you. God, you have stayed with the humans so long that you have started behaving like them. There is nothing embarrassing about craving your mate. Sarah, let it go, Emma finally said. It's your first time, she told me. Don't worry, no one's judging you. We stood in silence before the elders joined us. The temple was decorated and all the preparation for the ritual began. I felt him in my bones even before he stepped into the vicinity of the forest. Took a while for me to actually see him. But when I did see him, he was running towards me. His eyes darker than a moonless night. That is why you need to be mated before the ritual, I heard someone say. Before I could take another step, I was pushed against the nearest tree. His mouth descended on me and I eagerly kissed him back, not giving a second thought to the hundreds of wolves surrounding us. Seriously, our plan had major flaws. His body was pressed flesh against mine. It should have been painful, the grip he had on me, but it was only sending jolts of pleasure down my body. I could hear people say that we needed to stop, but it was only when he moved towards my neck, and I felt his canines grow longer, that I jolted out of my daze. My body was still responding to him, but the haze around my mind started to clear. I needed him near me, but I also need him to stop. I could see Evan approaching us. Liam's back was facing the crowd. I gestured Evan to not interfere before concentrating on Liam. I pulled him away from my neck and brought him back up. I'm sorry, I said between kisses, rubbing the spot above his heart. He growled, tightening his hold on me further. In response, I'll be here. Promise. I had to repeatedly whisper his name in his ears for him to take the control back from his wolf. His eyes were still dark. He rested his forehead against mine and took deep breaths. Are you ready? I asked after his breaths evened out. He nodded. Let's go then. I nodded my head towards the crowd. He moved away slightly, giving me the space to breathe, but held onto my hand. Everyone took relaxed breath. The rituals went by smoothly with me and Liam sticking next to each other like magnets. I quickly realized that the others weren't paying much attention to us because they too were busy sticking to their own mates. It was almost dawn by the time we finished. Sarah dropped me off to my house. When I turned towards the front door after seeing her off, I got the shock of my life. Liam was leaning against the door, his jaws clenched, his hands shoved in his pockets. We shouldn't do this, I said as my feet moved me towards him. I was in his arms before I finished the sentence. I know, he said, kissing me fiercely. He held me with one hand and opened the door with another. Shoving us inside, he kicked the door closed with his leg. My hands flew to the buttons of his white shirt as he carried me to my room. His hand was ready to pull my dress off my shoulder when I yelled with the last bit of resistance within me. "No." He growled as I pointed towards the bathroom but followed my order nevertheless. I pulled him into the shower with me and let the water fall free all over us. Sit down, I managed to tell him. You want me to sit under the shower? He asked skeptically in between labored breaths. I nodded before pulling him down with me. I don't think it's working, he said after a while, pulling me closer with newfound fierceness. His closeness is comforting my wolf, but is creating havoc inside me. We have to try. We don't want another Dan happening, I said, leaning into him. No, I don't regret Dan at all. I would have died without him. I understand, he said, resting his forehead against mine, pulling me even closer. My body is heating up more instead of cooling down. His face is now shielding my face from the water overhead. You do, I said, looking into his eyes. God, how close are we? Our eyelashes are touching. He nodded, causing my head to move along. Yes, he closed his eyes, a content smile lingering around his mouth. I too want her to be here, only when you are ready for her. Her, I said, confused. His eyes opened instantly. A flash of nervousness crossed his face. He's embarrassed. Laughter bubbled inside me as I pushed his face lightly to have a better look at him. You want a daughter, I said, grinning at the new information. And you find it funny, he accused, the back of his hand now caressing the skin on my neck. Since when I was suddenly more interested than I should be. Since forever, I suppose, he whispered, his eyes fixed on me. I could see desire clouding them. I stretched my arm to turn off the shower for a bit. Tell me more about her. It was more of an order. I suddenly want to know him. I want to know what's going on in that perfect head of his. The fact that I am inquiring him about his future babies under the shower half-naked isn't even bothering me. I'm just filled with the irresistible desire to know the man in front of me. She is beautiful, he said, smiling softly. She has those big charcoal black eyes, a cute button nose and the perfect baby pout. Her chubby cheeks will have dimples digging deep in them when she smiles, the most beautiful smile anyone has ever seen. He looked at me and I gasped. His eyes were painting the dream that his lips just revealed. It was engraved in his soul. He placed his hand at the side of my face, bringing me out of my daze. We'll watch her bounce around our front yard. Liam, my voice came out in hoarse whisper. He hummed, not taking his eyes away from his thumb that was now rubbing my bottom lip. How long I was afraid to let those words leave my throat. That dream. How long have you had that dream? I don't know, he said. I thought she was mine. But she wasn't. They took her home with them. I hated it. This time I want to take her home, right under their nose. All those things that I didn't understand, they were suddenly falling into place. A part of me, the little sane bit that remained, was begging me not to pry any further. I was unable to take in so much of new information, but I still wanted to see an end to this. I wanted to know all there is to know. Why didn't you ever tell me? You never talked to me, I said. You never wanted me to. You avoided me like a plague. You were close to everyone but me. You didn't want me, he replied. That's because. I was perplexed because I thought you hated me. You used to glare at me every time I went with Eva. Oh, I just had a eureka moment. It made me feel stupid. He chuckled. Don't flatter yourself, he laughed, leaning against the glass wall. I wasn't in love with you. Not the way I'm right now, at least. The silence that followed was deafening, with only the crazy beats of our hearts ringing in our ears. The shock in my eyes was mirrored by the horror in his as we both realized the meaning of his words. 32. I'll look forward to it. We are both stuck. That's what I realized when I looked at his face. He was ashamed that he confessed. Every time he looks at me, he remembers the past. Every time he feels happy, he also feels guilty for feeling happy. When he advances one step, he forces himself to take 3 steps back. Neither of us could move on from that day at the mountain almost 5 years ago. Him, because of his guilt, and me because I have lived so long cursing that day and cursing my fate that it has now become my comfort zone. I feel like moving out of that curse will require me to get out of my known territory. I feel vulnerable. Had our lives been normal, had we met on my 16th birthday and lived together like any other mated couple, I wouldn't have been so obsessed about differentiating him from his wolf and demanding both of their sincerity. The thought probably wouldn't have crossed my mind. You should finish what you were saying, I told him with a newfound resolve. My words perhaps jolted him out of the shock. He sat up in attention, his vulnerable eyes looking for answers in mine. You were saying. I raised my brows in inquiry. He looked like he had a lot to say, but every time he opened his mouth to speak, he clenches his jaws tight and shuts himself up. What I meant was that he started slowly. Of late, I've started wanting things that I don't deserve. Like what? I asked, not leaving his gaze. Like his eyes darkened. Your love. My stomach tickled as soon as the words left his mouth. I had to curl my toes to stop myself from feeling giddy all over. I took a deep breath. I'm your mate. You of all the people shouldn't be insecure about my love for you, I replied, knowing very well where the conversation was heading. Today is his day to speak. I'll make sure he's exhausted by the time he finishes talking. And for that I'll need a lot of self-control. He chuckled humorlessly. You sure love mocking me. I'm not mocking you. I thought that's all you need, Liam, I said. How will I know what you want if you don't tell me? A sudden blaze of heat rose his eyes. He held my elbow and pulled me closer, my face inches away from his. You want to know what I want? He almost barked out. I should have been scared, but I maintained my calm. I want you to be mine, his dark eyes glaring at me. I want all of you, mind, body and soul. Mine. He was breathing hard. I raised my free hand and placed it at the back of his head, running my fingers through his hair, trying to soothe him. Touching him also acted as a calming balm to my heat. And I urged him. And I want you to love me. Not because your wolf is tied to mine, but because it's me. I want you to come to me when you are ready, not when the world or the bond forces you to. I want you to know the exact moment you fell in love with me and relive the moment over and over again just like I do. He breathed. I want you to be happy with me. He dipped his head in my shoulder in resignation. I continued patting his head. You remember the date you asked me on? I said after a while. He nodded from my shoulder. Well, let's do it. His head went up so fast that I almost lost my neck. Do what? He asked curiously. The date, I repeated. Now the corner of his lips lifted up. You're sure? I nodded. It's 3 in the morning, he said. Where can we go now? We can't go anywhere, I reminded him. I don't think we can have a proper conversation if we move to anywhere warmer. That reminds me, we are almost dry again. Got to start the shower again. The look in his face said it all. The heat's got you bad, he smirked. All his earlier inhibitions gone. Ready? I asked. He smiled in amusement. Are you going to do the 1, 2, 3 countdown and start the date with a go? Not a bad idea, I smiled along. Well, what about food? I can take the shower as a venue for a date, but a date's never complete without food. And I don't want our first date. His speech was cut short when I turned the shower back on. Let's drink water on our first date and save the fantasies for later, okay? I told him today we just talk. That's the goal of this date. What do we talk about? He asked after he was done getting over my weirdness. I'm hoping you'll do most of the talking today, I said, leaning comfortably against the glass wall while he leaned on the opposite wall. Our feet being the only parts of our body touching. I was hoping he mimicked me, that in the 20-odd years of your life you would catch on to the fact that I'm not much of a talker. He smiled. But I'll try. Let's play 21 questions then, I suggested. You really want to play a game that 10-year-olds play? He asked skeptically. Well, had we played it when we were 10, we wouldn't have been strangers, I countered. Okay, he surrendered. I have a lot more than 21 questions though. We can play it as many times as we want, I offered. I would like that very much, he said, satisfied. And talk we did. It's a blessing that wolves don't catch cold easily. With the amount of times I turned the shower on and off, we should have been in the hospital by now. I even got up twice to take the pills my father gave me. I made him do most of the talking because it turns out that he knows a lot more about me than I do about him. When I asked him how he knew all those facts in detail, he blamed it on my loudness. He said he could hear me yelling from the hall when he was busy studying silently in his room. I don't believe him. I can't be that loud. You totally have a poker face. Like I was telling him, Mommy. Daddy. What ail you doing? I heard a voice. Did you hear that? I asked Liam. That sounded like Dan. Yeah, you should probably look behind you, he suggested. Good morning, buddy, he said, looking behind me. I turned and it was indeed my little devil. Oh, why did you wake up, baby? Did you have a bad dream? I was already moving towards him, ready to pick him up before I realized that I was wet from head to toe. Dan just looked at me, his eyes wide in confusion. It's 8, Liam's voice came from behind me. He finished. I had to blink twice to realize what he was saying. Well, I tried to cover up. You should have called for me, Dan. How did you find us? I heard you, Mommy, he said, scratching his unruly hair from my room. I turned to glare at Liam, who was now holding onto the counter for support as he almost lost his balance, laughing. Okay, I take my earlier declaration back. Well, someone looks a lot stable today, Emma commented as she ran around the living room trying to feed Dan. I was setting up breakfast for her and me. I smiled. I guess I did something to pacify my wolf. What did you do? She narrowed her eyes and scrunched her nose to take a whiff. Nothing close to the direction of your thoughts, I told her. Anyways, thanks for helping me out with Dan. Don't mention it, she dismissed me with a flick of her hand. I'll take this as a practice match, she said, wrestling Dan down. My eyes widened in excitement as I turned to face her seriously. OMG, OMG, OMG. Don't get ahead of yourself, she said, rolling her eyes even though a small smile lingered around her lips. It's just an early speculation. Don't tell others, okay? I immediately put my index finger on my lips and nodded. Oh my god, I still ran to crush her into a hug. This is awesome. I'm so happy for you guys. From the second night of the ritual, I had better plans to put into action. I, with Liam's permission of course, asked Evan to hold Liam back and see to it that he reaches the pack house and not my house. Evan, the Gamma, and a few other wolves took care of Liam after the rituals. It hurt our wolves, but we both agreed that this was the best decision for our situation. Something inside me changed after shower date. I am feeling more relaxed and less hopeless. I think I've finally decided on the path that I want to travel. And I also don't think it's just my wolf that looks forward to the rituals every night. Oh, that was one crazy month, Sarah said, landing herself dramatically on my couch. How many of you got knocked up? I gasped when I saw the number of raised hand, 3 including Sarah. You guys are kidding, right? I asked. Nope, Ruby shook her head before sighing adieu. My sexy body, she wailed, throwing her head back. Emma laughed. I turned to Emily. You should have joined them too, I poked her. No thank you, she said. Mommy needs a break. It's good though, I said as an afterthought. Your kids will have friends to play with. There isn't anyone Dan's age around here, I sighed. I'm worried he'll end up becoming no fun like his father. Alphas are always alone, sweetheart, Emma said. You can't do much about it. His mate will be the only true equal he can share everything with. So we can only hope that he finds his soon. It'll be really lonely for Dan without her. Dan's mate, it scares me to even let my thoughts wander that path. I can only pray that his fate doesn't end up like his parents. Ray, I gasped in surprise. Emma and I were sitting in my living room after the others left when the doorbell rang. Finding Ray at the other end wasn't what surprised me. It was the look on his face. His eyes were bloodshot red. His hair disheveled and he looked badly shaken. He was leaning against the balcony railing when I opened the door. What happened? I shook him by his shoulder when he didn't respond. Bring him some water, I asked Emma before pulling Ray into the house and settling him on the couch. I then knelt down in front of him. His state was scaring me, and I think I have a hunch of what must have happened. What's wrong? I asked again as I handed him the glass of water, which he gulped down in a blink. He started but refused to go any further. He grabbed a handful of his hair and dipped his head down in distress. Call Liam, please, I told a confused Emma. It's urgent. She rushed out of the house. What did she do, Ray? I asked desperately. Did she hurt you? Threaten you? He slowly raised his head, his bloodshot eyes piercing through me. You knew it was a statement. I lowered my head. Is that why you went to meet her? He asked, and I thought you were jealous. He chuckled humorlessly. How? You. I followed you, he sighed, grabbing another glass of water after I saw you take her number from my phone. I nodded. Are you okay? Are you really asking me that? He asked incredulously. What happened? Liam barged into the house, looking around frantically. Once his gaze landed on us, he relaxed and walked towards us, plopping down on the couch opposite to Ray. He found out I updated him. Oh, he leaned forward. Did she harm you? He asked Ray. Wow, Ray barked out a laugh. You guys do really move in sync, don't you? He said sarcastically. What happened? I asked again. What did she say? She. He let out an exasperated sigh. I can't even believe that she exists. We exist too, Ray, I reminded him. Yes, he said, you exist too. That's why I didn't die of heart attack when she drank that. He shuddered and couldn't continue. That's why I came to you. This is the first time he looked at me properly. I didn't know what to do. Eva, he resigned. I got up and sat next to him, wrapping my arms around him. Thank you for coming here, I said, rubbing his shoulder to comfort him. I still can't wrap my head around it, he muttered to himself. We can take care of her if you want, Liam spoke. Ray's head snapped up, like he didn't realize Liam was still here. What do you mean? He asked skeptically. She. Liam rephrased. No. I'm sure she's refusing to let you go. If you don't want her around. I glared at him, hoping he got the memo. This man doesn't understand emotions, does he? I was just saying, he fumbled. He really was telling Ray that he could kill the vampire for him. What are you saying? Ray narrowed his eyes at Liam. Nothing, I jumped in. You could stay here for the time being. Vampires don't traverse our territory without his permission. That's what he's saying. Yes, Liam agreed, and if she becomes a threat to your life, you'll kill her, Ray bit out. Is that what you're saying? No, I said. Yes, Liam replied in a businesslike tone and earned another glare from me. You guys are batch tea crazy. She threatens you, you threaten her. He dipped his head between his palms. God, what have I got myself into? He sighed. That's the only way to get her away from you, Liam said. Then he turned to me. He needs to know, he said. Liam then proceeded to explain to Ray all the complications surrounding vampires and their selection of soul mates. By the time he was done, Ray looked ready to pull out all his hair. So, I assume you don't want her dead, Liam concluded, and this time, for a change, earned a glare from Ray instead. He got up. I'll leave you to rest then. You sure look like you need some. He gave me a nod and walked towards the door. Seriously, you guys are leaving me speechless, he called after Liam, who turned back with a questioning glance. You are okay with me staying at her place? Ray quirked his brows. I don't come across as a threat anymore, or what? Ray, shut up, I said, but well, no one listens to me anyways. I do have an elaborate answer to that, Liam smirked. And I knew I wouldn't like what he's going to say next, but I think it'll be extra pleasurable to inform you that the vampire that chose you wouldn't let any other woman, let alone my woman, next to you for the rest of your life. I saw Ray's expression change from irritation to almost horror. He's kidding, I told Ray. I'll be back. I need to teach that man manners. I walked Liam out. Why did you remind him of her again? He's traumatized. Couldn't you just get along with him for a day? I glared at him. He'll get over it. He brushed the matter off. I, on the other hand, have something to say to you. What? I asked. Well, remember the date where you just fed me water? I chuckled. I need the fantasies date you promised me that day. This Sunday? He asked, his eyes fixed on me. It took me a moment, but I nodded. I'll look forward to it, I said truthfully. I'll indeed look forward to knowing him more. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and unlock more storylines.